All right, now let's look at our third type of problem. So we did parametric, we've done polar today. Now let's go move into the third, which is conic section. The first thing I want to ask you about are these problems that deal with a cone. You know, if you have a double nap cone that's cut by a plane, either perpendicular or parallel to the either slant or the base. In this case, it says perpendicular slant. How are you going to solve those? And the easiest way in this is if you can just remember a couple things in the formula chart. So again, this is on the cheat sheet, but let me go to the formula chart here. On this side, what I would remind you of is alphabetically, which word comes first, parallel or perpendicular?
Parallel.
Okay, so parallel are these two. Parallel comes first because it comes first in the alphabet. What comes second in the alphabet? Perpendicular. These two are perpendicular. And I gave you a memory technique. Buy some starbursts, which really I just want you to remember. Buy some starbursts. It helps you think. Buy some Starbucks if that's one of your things. Buy some starbursts. What does that refer to?
Base.
The base, the slant, or the base. So on our problem, what did it say? Perpendicular to the slant. So parallels are out. And base is out. So it has to be ellipse. Okay? You'll have one of those in the test. Now, other than that, conic section really is the memory section of it that you need to remember some things. You need to remember the words 2A, 2B, 2C. And so quick, go to your cheat sheet. Just make sure you can find this. Go to your cheat sheet at the end of your packet. And on conic sections, I have them right here. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. There are your words. For the problem solving section, which you have 4 of, you need to know your 2A, 2B, 2C. So 2A and 2B are like the opposites. A is the bigger one. So vertices are bigger than co-vertices. How can you remember that? Just think Hollywood. What's bigger, the star or the co-star? Star is the bigger one. They are, here's the next word, they are more major, whereas the minor, the new person on the say, whatever, is the co-star. So major, minor, vertice, co-vertice. Just think star, co-star, vertice, co-vertice, same thing. So 2A is the bigger one, 2B is the smaller one. 2B is always a smaller number, or in case of a hyperbola, it's the one that's negative after it's the negative fraction on the formula chart. I'll get to there in a second. The 2 are harder words to remember is transverse and conjugate. Transverse is 2A, conjugate 2B. I don't have a memory technique for that. And yeah, I don't have one yet. If you think one, let me know. Transverse and conjugate. I don't remember 2A or 2B. I don't know. 2C though is foci. Now I do have a memory technique for that one. It involves the formula chart. If you go to the formula chart, so now that's kind of where I'm going now. Formula chart. Here's if you get stumped, foci. Foci, when I come over here, let me slide this over just slightly. And this one too. Both foci, if you look at it, what these formulas for foci have, you see the thing that looks different is the plus or minus C. That's why it's 2 C's, is because one's a positive C, one's a negative C. If you have a positive C and a negative C, how many C's is that? 2. So you can use that to help you out. That foci is the 2C word because that's what they all have is 2 C's. Okay, so now let's solve the problems. I'm actually going to do most of these that will really quickly show you how you can do it with multiple choice. The first one here says which equation will represent a ellipse. That would tell you where on the formula chart to look. That has vertices. Okay, here's that one of those memory words. So when I 3, 2, you're either telling me 2A, 2B, 2C. 3, 2, 1.
2A.
2A. Now the question you ask yourself, as it said on the cheat sheet, is which letter is changing? Is it the X or the Y? Okay, now here's what that means. If it's Y that's changing, is at the end you're going to have some Y squared with the A squared in the same fraction. Everything from hyperbolas and ellipses gets squared. So they're gonna be the x and the y, excuse me, the y and the a are gonna be together. So 2a is gonna go from -3 to +5. How much, how far apart are those numbers? 8. That's a difference of 8 units. So 2a is 8. What does that mean 1a is? 1a is 4, and so a squared is 16. A squared is 16. So right now I'm gonna go to my formula charts. I have to have the y squared and 16 together as one fraction. Is A a good choice? Is B a good choice? Is C a good choice? Yes. Is D a good choice? No. Okay. Another trick. There's a few tricks with these sections. One is what's changing, eliminate it. A second trick is go to what's not changing. Which variable is not changing? The -2, which is x. Got it? So if x is -2, the trick to remember is for this section, when you plug in the x and y, they become liars. So x is supposed to be -2. Do I put it in as x plus 2 or x minus 2?
Plus 2.
Plus 2. So B is the correct. What am I doing? Sorry. A is the correct answer. And C is the incorrect answer because it has x minus 2. They're a liar. See how easy that was? You remember your vocabulary. You remember to say what changes, what doesn't change for the liar, and then oh, I remember the other trick. The other trick is with 2C. So let me get to that problem. Let's go to 14. So your tricks are know your vocabulary. So look at what's changing. Ask yourself what's changing, and make the stuff liars. Yeah, those are the kind of tricks you're looking at. Okay, what equation represents the hyperbola with a conjugate axis? All right, vocabulary. 2a, 2b, 2c.
2b.
2b. And it says it's 6. So what does that mean 1b is? 3, and you'll always want a, b, or c squared. So in this case, b squared. What's b squared? 9. You're going to have a 9 in an equation. If you look at it, they're all 9s. So they all have 9s. So I can't eliminate anything yet. And foci. What's that? 2a, 2b, or 2c? In colors, that's 2c. Good. Now, what's changing? The y's. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. How much is it changing by? 10. Very good. Because it was a positive 9. Now it's a -1. That's a total distance of 10. So if that's 2c, find 1c. And then c squared. Here's the other trick. What is c squared? And that will never be in the equation. It's important to find, but it's never in the answer choice. So we can eliminate, because what is in the answer choices are a squared and b squared, but never c squared. So those two are out. Now, here's to go off. You said the foci changed which letter? The y. So if I look at the formula chart, this is a hyperbola this time. So I'm on hyperbola. Make this easier. Let me clear this off of there. It's too much fun. This is a hyperbola. I go to foci. Now notice, do these two c's, are they in the x column or y column on this formula?
Yes.
That's in the x. They're not supposed to be in the x. They changed the y's. Two c's go in this one. So now, why is that important? We know what b squared is. B squared is going to be in what fraction? With the x. So our 9 has to go with x. Go to the formulas, the options. Which one has the 9 and the x together, b or d? That's our answer. This one does not have 9 with the x. Cool? I think I have one more, so we get to rock this one more time. Hyperbola has vertices. 2a, 2b, or 2c? 2a. You ask yourself, what's changing? The y. So it'll be a y squared over a squared. So 2a is, I already asked you how much has it changed from -5 to +3? That is a change of 8. So 2a is 8. What is 1a? 4. And what is a squared? So 16 has to be with the y squared. That would be wrong there. That's wrong there. So it's either C or D. And you can ask yourself, other question is what is not changing? What doesn't change this problem? And the x of 2. So if x equals 2, how should that go into a parenthesis? X minus 2. So that eliminates D. So the answer has to be D. Now, if you're wondering what does asymptote have to do? If you knew the equation, you could look on the formula chart, their asymptote is on there. If you knew which equation you were working with, you would know, is that B over A or is it A over B? It can be positive or negative, that's what the plus or minus means. But even if you don't, here's the way to think of it in Algebra 1. Algebra 1 tells you that slope is rise divided by run. What that means is the value underneath the y squared and the value underneath the x squared. This represents the rise squared. This represents the run squared because y is rise, run is x. So on the answer choices to show you, what's the square root of 16? And what is the square root of 64? If you did rise, which is the y, rise over the run, 8. What's 4 divided by 8? 1/2, and that's where that came from. So that's how that would matter. If you could eliminate the options as well that did not have a rise over run 1/2.
How do you know it's negative?
It could be negative or positive. It's actually both on any problem. If you graph these, you'd have two asymptotes, one positive and one negative. So that part's irrelevant. And that's why on the formula chart they put plus or minuses. That's a great question. That's conic sections. Any questions over that? The second way here, the oh shoot, would actually be to use the calculator. It would take longer, but if you use calculator, what type of when you look at the equations, what variables do you see? Only x and y. Where do you graph anything that has only x's and y's? Relation. You could go to relation, and if you graph it as a relation, that's not what I wanted. If you go to relation, this is the oh shoot, back up. I would not do this first because it takes way too long. But if you graph them here, I'm gonna simplify the problem. This xy first. Why? I know I'm not doing the equation right, but I'm just gonna do it this way, just for the sake of time.
Mister, how do you know if the y is supposed to have a positive? Or negative?
Oh, this is negative, sorry. Hang on 1 second, let me type this in, and I'll get you a question. If you graph those, you can always do menu, analyze graph, analyze conic, and from here, you could look on the list, is asymptote on here?
Yeah.
6. I click on it, you'll see that it has two equations. Here's one of them, positive 1/2, the other one, negative 1/2. The only thing I did not include were the parentheses part, but that just changes where the center is of the graph. It doesn't change your asymptotes. So that's why I skipped that part. So, okay, now your question.
They know if the y is not negative.
Oh, so how? You mean in the parentheses or or are you talking about the fraction being the positive fraction?
Cause I understand the x, but what about the y?
Why is it y plus 1?
Yeah.
Okay, here's why. If you ask what's the middle, man, I have so much ink here. I'm gonna clear the ink. If you ask what's in the middle of these two numbers, so you said it's 4 units away. What's the middle? Whoops, that's an x-axis, and we're talking about y. What's the middle of that's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5, and 1, 2, 3. What's the middle value between those two? It's right there, -1. That means that's what the y equals. And so in the parentheses, was the answer C? It would be y plus 1.
The opposite.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Great question. So that's topic 3.